The review team will conduct a thorough, factual, and objective investigation of the events. In the interest of protecting the integrity of the ongoing investigation,
the FBI in Houston investigating now a deadly shootout between its agents and two suspected kidnappers who allegedly kidnapped 3 migrants last Saturday. A prosecutor with the Waller County District Attorney's Office says that the migrants were riding in a vehicle outside of Houston when they were stopped by a group of people and then forced into another vehicle. One of the victims' family even paid a ransom until the kidnappers demanded even more money. The kidnappers reportedly sent the family some videos showing that they were armed, the hostages were alive, and in one of the videos showed them beating one of the hostages, an older man. The FBI won't say how it tracked them down, but agents did find the suspects and 2 hostages at a motel near Houston yesterday morning, and that's when the gunfire began. One suspect is dead. Another has now been arrested, and the FBI is in Houston saying all hostages have been safely rescued. I want to bring in Tracy Walder, now former CIA officer and FBI special agent, to talk more about this situation. I think, first of all, do we know who these kidnappers are? Is this a common thing?
So that's a great question, Marnie. Thank you for having me. I think there's 2 types of people that these kidnappers could be. The first would be human traffickers. That's not unheard of. Migrants are very susceptible to that. About 76% of victims of human trafficking are migrants. So it could be that they were kidnapping them and then, obtaining ransoms in the hopes of, selling them into a human trafficking network. The second one could be that sometimes you pay a ransom to continue your illegal journey into the country. And we did have a case of that about 9-10 years ago in Houston, where 115 migrants were actually found in a home, and they were being held captive basically by 5 kidnappers. So this isn't unheard of.
And by paying a ransom, does it lead to more of this?
It's hard to say, right? Because obviously if you don't pay the ransom, it can lead to death, and you don't want that, right? The victims' family members don't want that. But at the same time, to your point, yes, if you continue paying ransoms, this is a huge source of income to these criminals, and they know that they can get away with it. So it's sort of a double-edged sword here.
Do you expect that the FBI will release more information about who was involved, the one kidnapper that was killed, the other who's now being detained?
I suspect that they will, simply because, and they have stated that they do not believe that the public is at risk. So that's obviously important to note. I do suspect that they may release some information in regards to what the purpose of this kidnapping was for. They may not release any information on the hostages themselves.
What about cartels? Any cartel involvement possible here? We're just hearing so much about them infiltrating themselves into so many bad things that are happening.
Sure. A main source of income for cartels as well is hostage payments, right? We saw that not that long ago in Matamoros, actually. And so, look, it could potentially be a cartel network that was taking them hostage. Although I think because we have seen this before in terms of these continued hostage takings, that's more what I'm leaning towards in regards to what this is. But the reality is a lot of these networks are paying into cartels anyways. So they're all involved. It just may not be, it may be more on the tertiary sides of it.
I mentioned a moment ago that some of the migrants were able, the driver at least, was able to call 911. We don't know how the FBI was able to track them down. What goes in, though, to finding these types of victims behind the scenes?
So, yes, it would have initiated, obviously, with that 911 call by the driver, and that was very astute, quite frankly, of the driver. It's very rare to hear of. The next thing that they would have done is obviously asked the driver, where was the last location that you were? And then from there, they probably would have started asking for video camera surveillance. As you know, there's many video cameras on our public roadways, outside of buildings, and then been able to track them to basically that Motel 6 hotel. So that's how the location would have gone. Next, they would have mobilized their hostage rescue team, which really is their elite group that is trained to safely get hostages out of dangerous situations.
And how do they do that? How do they work to defuse the situation and not hurt anybody else in the peripheral?
So that's a great question. A lot of times the HRT or hostage rescue team is misunderstood. People think they go in there, sort of breaking down doors and getting hostages, and that's not the way to obtain hostages safely. One of the things they try to do is actually build a rapport with the kidnappers. And I know that seems a little backwards, but that's one of the best ways that you can get hostages released safely. From building that rapport, then they're able to find the weaknesses actually of the kidnappers, exploit those, and then get hostages out safely.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.